Hey everyone! The CSAE Ottawa-Gatineau Young Professionals Network is going to be hosting a mock strategic planning session on Wednesday, October 24th at 3:30 during the CSAE National Conference. I'm sitting here today with our mock facilitator, Meredith Low, who's going to be helping us with our burning strategy questions. So we've received some excellent questions from the young professionals, and I was hoping Meredith might tackle one of them in a little bit of point form today, just as a teaser. We're looking at how do you build a plan that has concrete measurements, which is one of my favorite strategy questions.
It's an excellent strategy question because everybody has that question. It's a huge, huge challenge. So I think the first question to ask about that question is, why do you want measures at all? What are you going to use them for?
Good point.
Do you want to take a stab at it?
Yeah, well, I would have to say that, if we don't have those concrete measurements in place, how would we know if we're actually accomplishing anything on the strategies that we've picked? And also, if our board doesn't know what we're supposed to be accomplishing, how can they help us decide whether or not we're doing what we should be doing?
Right. So it's this organizational level of accountability. And so I think one thing is to make a distinction between the metrics that you use to measure the strategic plan itself and the metrics you might use to measure somebody's actual work performance, job performance. So I think one of the challenges then that comes up is that you're talking about strategic measures that are very long-term and that are outcome-oriented, not output-oriented. So it's really easy for us to say, well, we put out 4 newsletters this year, or we put out 12 newsletters this year, whatever your choice is. It's easy for us to say that we signed up a certain number of members, but it's harder for us to say we signed up a certain number of members, which is the number we should have been signing up on a strategic level, right? So there are things that are easier and harder to count, and there are things that are oriented to the things we did as opposed to whether they had the effect we were hoping that they had. So one thing that comes up in figuring out measures for a strategic plan is getting really comfortable with long-term measures and then finding, say, proxy measures, shorter-term leading indicators that can help us understand, whether we're on track to get to that long-term measure. And the other piece that people really struggle with is sometimes those are qualitative. Sometimes it's sort of a sense of, are we influential? Well, how do you measure that? And related to that is the challenge of, you could count it, but how much money are you going to invest and time are you going to invest in a system to track those measures? So if we could find out what absolutely every member thinks of an association, that would be great, but it would cost more than any member is willing to pay us to be members of the association. So you always have to balance that question of sort of data sufficiency with the cost of gathering the data, and that comes up all the time in measurement. So then you have to get really, really comfortable with things that are indicators of other things. And so I think that takes sort of that level of analytics and that level of understanding of what you're trying to measure and how. And it's just this extra layer of time that needs to be invested. And sometimes at the end of a strategic planning process, people just want to get on with the implementation. Yeah. So I think that it's part of the board holding itself accountable. So it's got an element of board governance to it and sort of board practices for them to set some metrics for the strategic plan and then track them on a regular basis. So it is a really big challenge. A lot of associations really struggle with it. A lot of associations, feel like they're not doing it particularly well. But I think it's also very illuminating for the strategies to set some metrics to say, here's what we're trying to accomplish. Here's the path we're trying to go down, how we're trying to go down that path. And here's how we know we're on the right path and how far down the path we are.
Oh, I think that's wonderful. So I think everybody can take some concrete pieces away from that. And if you want more, you're going to have to join us on Wednesday, October 24th at 3:30 for the CSAE National Conference session, Mock Strategic Planning. And if you've never been to a mock session before, think mock legal trial. It's the same kind of idea. We're going to have some excellent executives in the room who will be acting for us. And of course, we'll have Meredith on site to guide us down the right path. So join us and we look forward to seeing you there.
Okay. Do we all have to wear mock turtlenecks?
Ooh, we'll have to talk about that, but I think there's some talk of some different hats. So I'm just saying, wardrobe's going to be worth it.
But mock turtlenecks are optional.
We'll see.
See you there.